Let your library teach you a simple macrame craft. If you've registered for this event, you'll be able to collect your macrame kit from your local library, but you can easily piece together your own materials. Mel will talk you through all of this equipment in the workshop you're about to see. But first, let's go to the library studio and meet Mel.
Hi everyone, I'm Mel Orams, and today I'm going to be teaching you how to make a fun little project at home. It's really easy, you don't need any special materials or equipment. If you want to be able to pick up a kit, you can from your local library, and I'm really excited to be doing this with you today. A little bit about what I do. So I live in McLean and I have a little business called MeCo Macramé, and I travel around the coast teaching people how to do fun projects, tying knots for fun. So if you're looking for a fun project to do at home that doesn't take a lot of material and isn't very expensive, this will be perfect for you. So today we're going to be making a really fun project, and it's going to look something like this. So this is called a feather charm. They're really fun and easy to make. Anyone could make one as long as you know how to tie a knot. If you know how to tie your shoes, you're already halfway there. Basically, when you're at home, all you're going to need is the kit that you get from your library and a few items that you have hopefully got at home. Something like a comb, doesn't need to be fancy, a sharp pair of scissors and some hairspray. It doesn't really matter what brand it is, we're just going to be using it to spray on our feather so that it can be nice and stiff before we cut it. In your kit that you get from the library, you're going to have a few items in it. The first one is a lobster clip. You can use this to clip your feather onto your backpack or onto your keys. You might even like to make an extra one for a friend, or maybe for your mum or your favourite grandma or auntie. You're also going to have an extra long piece of rope. This is about 25 centimetres long. You'll also have another 6 pieces of rope of all different colours. And these are the things that we're going to be using to make our feather. To start off with, you're going to need your lobster clip and the extra long piece of rope that's in your kit. If you have a look at all the different ropes that are in your kit, you'll see that some are shorter, but one is going to be extra long. That's the one that we want to start off with. It doesn't matter if it's not green, because they're all going to be different colours. So what we want to do with this is we're going to thread this extra long piece of rope through the bottom of the lobster clip. Can you see how there's a little hole just there? Start by holding that and thread one end of your rope through there and fold that in half. That's the first step. The next thing that you want to do is decide what order your ropes are going to be in. I think that looks pretty good. If you have a look at this feather that's been done, you can see that there are different stripes of colours. Those different stripes are made with these ropes that we have here. Once you've decided what order you'd like your ropes to be in, you'll need to separate the fibres. Come and have a look. Can you see how these fibres are twisting around? If you twist them in one direction, they get tighter. But if you twist them in the opposite direction, you can see that they'll start to separate out into 3 separate pieces. The easiest way to separate these is, once you've got it to this point, give it a gentle pinch with one hand and use your other hand to pull one out at a time. That's the easiest way to separate these fibres. I'm going to start off by doing one colour at a time, so I'm going to use pink for this one. Again, I want to twist this out, separate the fibres, and pull one out at a time. I'm laying these down horizontally, one above the other. The next thing I want to do is take my keychain and lay that across the top. When you tie your shoelaces, you know that very first knot that you tie? That's that knot that we're about to do now. I like to start off by putting left side over the right. If I hold that straight, I'm going to put the left side over the right side. When they make a cross shape, I then want to take the left one, tuck it underneath and pull, just like when we tie our shoes. And then I'm going to repeat that with each of these strands. So again, I'm taking the left side, I'm tying it across the top, tuck that left piece underneath and pull it outwards. While I'm doing this, I'm trying to keep it so that each side is even. I want to try and tie it in the middle so that my feather doesn't look so lopsided. I'm not tying it very tightly. Later on, before we start doing more with our feather, we'll need to tie it very tightly. So just to start off with, it doesn't have to be super tight. The next thing we want to do is grab the bottom of your feather chain and we're going to slide these upwards using our opposite hand, just like this. Can you see how they're all sitting nicely together? Now we have space to add the extra colours.
Next, Mel uses yellow. This might be a different colour in your own macrame feather. She separates the cords and then ties them on. Now it's time to slide them up, grab the bottom and use the opposite hand to push them up gently. And now it's time to separate and tie on the final strips of colour. It's important that you use 3-ply cotton, otherwise you can't unravel it to create your fluffy feather. Now if you make a mistake with your tying, don't worry, Mel is about to show you how to fix it.
Oh dear, I've made an accident. That's all right. If you make a bit of a mess with your rope, all you need to do is slide it off, untie it, and try again. Down the bottom here, it's starting to look like I'm running out of space. If you are starting to run out of space, but you still have more to tie on, that's okay. You can actually move them up before you finish tying them on to create more space for yourself. There we are. It's starting to look more like a feather now. Once you're happy with the placement of where your fibres are, it's time to tie them extra tight. To make these knots extra tight, you want to grab one end and then the other end of a colour and pull them firmly outwards, like this. Can you see how this looks a little skinnier than the yellow that's above it? That's because we've tightened it. If we tie these nice and tight, then they're not going to come off. There. This is what the front of the feather looks like. If I turn it over, this is what the back looks like. The last thing that we need to do now is to unravel the bottom of our feather. The next tool that we're going to be using is a hairbrush. This is one that I've brought from home. It doesn't need to be fancy, and it doesn't matter if it doesn't look like this. The best kind of brush that you'd like to use is something where the teeth have gaps in between. We're going to use this to separate out the fibres on our feather to make it look extra fluffy. I find it easiest to put my hand on one side of the feather and then brush outwards. Can you see the difference? Once you've done one side, you can spin it around and brush the other side. It doesn't matter if you brush the front or the back first, because we're going to brush both sides. And there we go. If I pick this feather up now, what do you think's going to happen? It's gone a bit floppy. There's something that we need to do to make this feather extra stiff, like this one. See when I hold that up compared to this one. Now that we've finished brushing our feather out, it's time to start putting some hairspray on it. To do that, you're going to need some paper, some hairspray, and your brush. If you don't have paper like this at home, that's okay. Any kind of scrap paper will do. Even an old newspaper is perfect. The only reason we're using this is so that we don't get hairspray all over our table. If you have asthma or difficulty breathing, I highly suggest you doing this outside, but for this video, we're going to do it here. Before we do the hairspray, I'm going to lay this down facing the table. Can you see the knots that are on the back? That's how I know that this is facing the way that I want it to. I have the clip facing towards me. I'm going to brush it out one more time before I spray. I want to make sure that this looks perfect before I put that spray on. A handy little tip to think about is that you want to brush away from you. Can you see how this is curving upwards? If you do that, you're going to get a much better result. Now we're ready to use the hairspray. It doesn't matter what brand you use, the important thing is you want to use a strong one. I've got an extra hold hairspray here, and we're going to apply this using a few coats. The first thing you want to do is give it a really good shake. Take off the lid, check where the nozzle is, there it is, and you're going to want to point that towards your feather. Doesn't need to be really close, probably about this far is perfect. And wait a few seconds. That was 2 coats. It's time to flip this feather over. This is your last chance to brush your feather before we put the last coat. Make sure the front of your feather looks perfect. You have to be really happy with it before you spray this. Once we do our final coat of hairspray, we don't want to brush this anymore. Here we go again. Give it a good shake. now we want to leave this in a sunny spot to dry. Don't touch it. Find a spot that's safe, that no one's going to accidentally step on it. Now that it's been 5 or 10 minutes, our hairspray is dried and we have a very stiff leaf. See how nice and stiff that is? It's not done yet though, because we want to have something that looks a bit more like this. To cut this, we're going to be needing some extra sharp scissors. It doesn't really matter what kind of scissors you use, but the sharp kind are best. If you're a younger maker, you might want to get some help from an adult. The easiest way to cut this is to hold your scissors straight and make sure your fingers are away from the blades. If you're right-handed, cut on the right-hand side. Just remember, once you've cut this, you can't glue it back on, so have a really good think about what shape you'd like it to be before you start. There. Now that I've cut one side, I can turn this over and cut the other side. If you don't like the shape of the feather that you've cut, have a look at it and you can give it a little trim just to make little adjustments until you're happy. And there you have it, a finished feather. If you're feeling a bit more confident and you want to do a different kind of shape, maybe have a think about playing with some different shapes. Just to show you some examples, I've brought some other feathers. Here we've got a skinny feather. This one's a scalloped feather. And here we've got a big extra chunky feather. Thanks for joining us for this workshop. Hope you had fun. If you'd like to share your photos of what you got up to, we would love to see them. Please feel free to bring them into your local library or share them on social media. Have fun. See ya.
For more things to create and explore, visit your library website or YouTube channel.